Hey Savvy people, it's Savvy Nick here, and today I'm doing a follow-up video on the Debian install. As suggested by a member of the channel, we're going to go through a few basics here on Debian. For beginner users, plan is to show you how to make your normal user a super user who can log in to a root session, or simply said, give them admin access like they have in Windows. We'll also install a great multimedia player and then show you how to install missing codecs, followed by how to install a program that allows you to emulate Windows programs called Wine. So we'll first start a terminal, which is called console in this KDE version here of Debian. And once I got that up, let me just make this a little bigger so we can see the font a little better. And I'll make this full screen. Mainly we'll be focused on using terminal for this video today. And if you're new and stopping by to watch a video today, make sure to go ahead and subscribe and hit the notification bell for future videos, installs, and tutorials. This, of course, is a brand new install of the KDE desktop version of Debian 10. And that's what I'll be installing everything on today. So let's just take a look at all the sudoers available to the system. We can do this by typing in sudo space vi sudo and then go ahead and type in a password. As you can see here, it says SavvyNick is not in the sudoers file and that the incident will be reported. And that's exactly the type of error that we want to take away. We want to add our user to the sudoers so they have access to root. So what we'll first have to do is actually log in with the root user. So when installing this system, at least if you followed my install instructions, the normal user that you created won't have root privileges. So in order to give it, we'll have to log in as root. So if we just do su space root and then type in the password for our root user, we'll be able to log in as root. As you can see now, I'm root. And let's try the sudo vi sudo again. And now we have access to our file. Let's go down real quick. As you can see here, we have a root user, and that root user has all and every access to the system, as well as any members of the group sudo. So something simple that we can do is actually just add our user that we created, so like I created SavvyNick, to the sudo group, and then we'll be fine. So I'm just going to exit out of here by doing Control X, and following that, we'll do a simple command as long as you're logged in with root, sudo space add user, and then type in the username that you want to add to a specific group and just type in the group name. So you got sudo here. If we do that, it says it's adding SavvyNick to the group sudo and it's finished successfully. So now we can go ahead and test that access. So let's clear the terminal. First, I'm going to change users. So let me just go back to SavvyNick here with su SavvyNick. Let me just do sudo su. And then it's asking me for the password for SavvyNick. I type it in, and look at that. Now I can get into root using my SavvyNick user. So that's great. We have no more errors. So now our user that we created besides root can log in as a root user as well. So that's great. It's really nice to have this ability just so you can type in sudo while you're in your normal user to advance privileges to the next level and be able to execute all sorts of commands. So while we're at it now, let's go ahead and just install another desktop environment. A lot of beginners like to go ahead and do this, experiment around with different desktop environments. It's very easy to do. Right now I have KDE available to me. What I'm going to do is I'm going to actually install GNOME, and I'm going to show you how quick and easy that is. If I just do sudo apt install, and then I type in GNOME, it should be as simple as that. Now this might take a little bit, and there might be quite a bit of packages to install, but it should be a fairly easy process here through the terminal. And now, since SavvyNick belongs to the sudo group, we can use sudo up here in front. So let's go ahead, that's why this is important, and do that. And it says, do we want to install all of these dependencies and packages? Yes, we do. And we'll continue, give this a few moments. And here we're asked about what display manager we want to use. I'll go ahead and select the defaulted one here, the SDDM. You You can do a little bit of research to figure out whatever display manager you want to go ahead and use. This one's fine for me, so I'm just going to go ahead and hit enter and let the install finish here. If you went ahead and made it this far, make sure to hit the like button. It really does help me out. So let's go ahead and see if we can log into our GNOME desktop now. I'm going to go ahead and leave and sign out or log out. And we might require actually a restart here, but it doesn't look like we do. So we have 4 different versions here: GNOME Classic on Xorg, GNOME, and GNOME Wayland. I'm going to go ahead and use the Wayland version. And then I'm going to go ahead and log in real quick. So this should take us to our new desktop environment here. And as you can see, it's a little bit different. Up top, we have activities now, and we don't have the taskbar at the bottom anymore. So welcome to your new desktop environment. Like I said, it's very easy to go ahead and install. And you can also remove desktop environments if you're not using them anymore. So I'm going to go ahead and zoom in, and this is a new terminal here. And I'll go ahead and actually install one more different type of desktop. So if I just do sudo apt install, let's try out Budgie desktop is the package name here. Put in my password here, and it doesn't seem like it actually took across the whole entire system, so I'm going to actually restart the system real quick and verify that things work here. So give me one moment. All right, GNOME Wayland is selected. I'm going to put my password in real quick again, load into the desktop, and we'll retry that command real quick. So using terminal, I'm going to make this a little bigger. And now if we do sudo apt install Budgie desktop and put our password in, you can see that it did work this time. It doesn't look like the whole system got updated with when we put SavvyNick in to be of the group sudo. So it does look like it requires a restart. Make sure to restart your computer, and then you'll be able to use your normal user to log in as a root user. All right, now we have the Budgie desktop. So I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to go ahead and log out of my user, and I'm going to go ahead and go up here and select the Budgie desktop and log into that session instead. And here we are. So another desktop environment available to us, a little different again. I'm going to launch a terminal in here instead and then continue on. As you can see, a little different, but I really want to go ahead and use the GNOME desktop. I think we'll be able to see the commands easiest on that. So we're going to go ahead and move on to installing Wine, which will allow us to run Windows applications on Linux. So instead of Budgie, I want the GNOME Wayland, and put my password in, get back in here. It's super fun to go ahead and play around with these desktops, so play around until you find one that you like, then you can remove all the rest. I'm going to go ahead and make this bigger again for us, and let's go ahead and go through how to install Wine on Debian 10 here. These are all great beginner things to know how to do after you got Debian 10 installed. One thing I do want to show you, all the different desktop environments you can download and install. So as you can see here, there's a ton of different desktop environments: GNOME, Plasma, XFCE, LXDE, Mate, and a few other ones available here below for Debian. So make sure to go ahead and visit this page. I'll go ahead and put a link in the description below for you to be able to use and reference. All right, and after showing you that real quick, I'd like to go ahead and show you Wine here. So we have this. So we're on the Wine HQ website where we can see how to install Wine for Debian. You can go through the website, and I'll also include this one in the description below. But the main steps here are highlighted now. You can see that Wine requires the 32-bit architecture packages to be enabled for the use of programs, since a lot of the programs were initially designed on a 32-bit architecture. So we'll go ahead and have to run this first. Basically, I'm going to be running through these instructions here, so if you need to follow along, you can always follow using the written form. But there is one little provision that we need to make, and it's right here. It's got a little caution. It says for Debian 10, and later it requires the libfaudio 0 as a dependency. And there's a little forum post on how to fix this dependency, but I'll go ahead and just show you in the video how to do that instead of having to scourge through their forums and figure out how to get that dependency resolved. So now back to the terminal where we're going to do the rest of the install for Wine. The very first thing I want to do is do sudo dpkg. I'm going to add an architecture. This will enable the 32-bit architecture, i386. Go ahead and put your password in. Now the 32-bit architecture should be enabled. Next we'll do wget to get something from online. So we want to go and get something from the winehq.org website, and it's under wine builds, and it's the key. So winehq.key. I'll go ahead and put these instructions in the description below. And as you can see here, we've downloaded the key. So the next thing we have to do is add the key. So we can do that by doing apt key add winehq.key, the file we just got done downloading. It says OK here for confirmation that we've added the key. Next, I want to add something to the sources list. So sudo nan, it's an etc apt, and then sources.list. We're using nano to go ahead and edit this file. And where we want to edit is just somewhere below here. I'm going to press enter, and then I'm going to just type in wine to kind of distinguish what we're adding this line in for. And we want access to https://winehq.org, their website, wine-builds, and the Debian build. And we're going to put Buster main here, Buster meaning Debian 10. Following that, I'm going to go ahead and save and exit. So if you just do Control X and then type in yes, it'll ask you where you want to go ahead and write the file to. Just press enter to overwrite the file. And following that, we're going to run sudo apt update. Since we mess with repositories, we'll make all the necessary updates. And let's go ahead and try installing Wine at this point. So if we do sudo apt install -- install recommends, and then the package is winehq stable. And it says here we are unable to install because we have unmet dependencies. Well, this is where that second portion comes in that I mentioned, that there's a caution up at the top of the winehq website for Debian 10 that tells you that we need the libfaudio 0 package. So we can actually get that by doing wget https download. Now this is a pretty long one, but I'm going to run through it anyway. OpenSUSE.org repositories, and it's in emulators for wine /Debian /Debian _10, and we need the release key from here. And great, we were able to get it, so we put in everything correctly. I'll go ahead again, supply this into the description below if you want to just copy and paste. That'll make it a lot easier on you. Following that, we'll add this key as well, just like we did before. Sudo apt-key, and then add the new release key. It says OK, so it's confirmed it's been added. Let's go ahead and use nano again, so sudo nano. We'll open up that same etc apt sources.list file. And where wine is located, let's add one more repo here. So this one is going to be deb, similar here, https. Now it's download.openSUSE.org repositories. And then we want emulators, wine, Debian, and Debian _10. And we'll put that right here. Let's go ahead and do Control X. And let's go ahead and write our changes. Press enter to overwrite the file. Following that again, sudo apt update, since we made changes to repositories. Give it a few moments here to make updates. And then let's go ahead and retry the install of WineHQ stable. So again, sudo apt install the recommends with WineHQ-stable. And as you can see here, now it's populated all the libraries and packages that we need, really just the suggested packages and dependencies here. And there's quite a lot, which is fine because Wine requires quite a bit of packages and libraries in order to emulate Windows programs here on our Linux Debian 10 environment. I'm going to go ahead and press yes to install every package. This might take a little bit, so give it a few moments here to go ahead and finish up the install. All right, and once we're back here, we can go ahead and just test out Wine. So how can we do that? Let's just type in Wine and try out the Notepad program by typing Notepad after it. Give it a few moments here to go ahead and load things up. And here we go. So Wine now says that we need extra, basically, packages in order to go ahead and run the Notepad. So let's go ahead and install them. It's downloading now, but this is a great sign that we're getting this prompt here. It looks like Wine installed successfully, and we'll be able to test it here once we have all our dependencies met. So it's searching through. As you can see, it's asking about getting the Gecko installer. So we're going to go ahead and download that as well, since it is a dependency. Give it a few moments. We might have a few more here before we're in the clear. And let's see, we got more. And it looks like we're finished here. And look at that. We have an untitled Notepad file open. Looks very much like you would see in Windows. Congratulations if you've made it this far. You've successfully installed Wine. And Wine is a great tool to have here on Linux, especially if you're new coming from Windows. One other thing I do suggest is something that will help you install applications into Wine. It's a graphical method which will make things much easier on you. I'm going to go ahead and exit out of here. And once that's exited out, you can see that we're back in our terminal and we're exited out of Wine since we had Notepad started with it. So I also want to go ahead and install one more thing here, but I'm going to go ahead and first add two different repositories here. So if I do this sudo apt add repository, if I do the non-free or proprietary repository, so now that's enabled, as well as the sudo apt add repository for contributions by the community, we can go ahead and add those in. And of course run sudo apt update to update our repositories. And finally, we'll go ahead and install a program that's great to use with Wine called playonlinux. It'll help you install various different applications into Wine that you're used to having in Windows. And we can do that by doing sudo apt install play on Linux. It's important that you go ahead and use the non-free and contrib repositories, otherwise you cannot get this package. So I'm going to go ahead and hit yes here. Take a moment to install, and then we'll go ahead and launch it real quick just to test it out and see what it does for us. So if we hit on activities, we can now run play on Linux. It should be available, as you can see. And now I have this new application started. And why is this so great? Well, you can simply install different programs available to Wine simply through a graphical method now. It'll take a few minutes to go ahead and update all the repositories and information of applications available through Wine once you start play on Linux for the first time. So just give it a few moments to go ahead and update. And while that's going, the next thing I want to show you real quick is another popular thing to do is go ahead and install various different types of codecs. One very popular one is a DVD codec, which here on this page, now this is for Ubuntu documentation, but it's very helpful in the way that they've written this, and Ubuntu is a Debian-based distribution. Very similar instructions apply, and I'll be showing you those instructions anyway. But in order to just kind of read through here, So the fact is you can go ahead and install various different types of multimedia players, but not all of them come with all the codecs, and sometimes you have to go ahead and install them by yourself. One particular one that most DVDs need in order to be played is this lib DVD CSS2. As it says here, most commercial DVDs are encrypted with CSS, Content Scramble System, which attempts to restrict software from playing DVDs. So we'll need this codec in order to play most DVDs on the system. And also I like using VLC Media Player, so I'll go ahead and show you how to install that as well as the codec. It'll be a very similar process for various different codecs that you might need or you run into as you're messing with the Linux system and figure out that you need later. So it's something nice to be able to reference and do. So let's go back to the system and just check up on our Play on Linux update of programs. All right, and great. This is all finished up. So as you can see here, we have subcategories up top. I'm just going to click on games, and you can see all the different various games that we can install, whether or not they're trial versions. All depends on which you select. But as you can see, here's the Age of Empires series. And I can select any of these Age of Empires and go ahead and on the bottom right-hand corner, hit install. But let's go ahead and get something a little bit simpler here. Let me see what else. So if I go to accessories, I'm going to go ahead and give, let's see, 7-zip a shot real quick. Let's just install that. That's a fairly small package, so we don't have to wait too long. As you can see here, I'm asked a few questions. I can go ahead and hit next through them. And then Play on Linux will begin to install 7-zip for us. 7-zip is a popular compression tool that's available for Windows, and now you can use it here in Linux as well through an emulator called Wine. So we'll give this a few more moments to go ahead and install. And while that's going on, let's go back to the terminal. I'm going to clear things out real quick. And so let's go ahead and try that real quick before we move on actually. So you can see 7-zip right here. If we hit the run button, since it's installed on our system now, give it a few moments. And here we go, it came up. So now you can add, extract files that are zipped up, test them, copy them, move them, delete them, do whatever you need, much like you can in Windows with 7-zip. This is a great tool to have, Play on Linux and Wine together, for beginners that are moving towards any Linux platform and or distribution, including Debian and Debian 10 here that we're using today. Congratulations if you got this far. We'll go ahead and exit out of these two. You can go ahead and play around with that some more when you get a moment. I'll go ahead and go back into that terminal and continue what we were doing, installing those codecs for the DVD playback. So continuing on, sudo apt add repository. We've already done this, but I'm going to show you this once more anyway. We'll first need to go ahead and enable the non-free repositories, so the proprietary repositories for this Linux distribution, as well as do the sudo apt add repository for the contribution one. So from the community, and then sudo apt update to make sure we are up to date with the latest and greatest of the repositories. And then following that, we can do simply sudo apt install. And the first library and codec that we want is the lib dvd read 4, and then the one that was mentioned on the website was lib dvd css2. And let's go ahead and install. As you can see, it's going to take about 144 megabytes of his additional disk on the storage space. And you can hit yes if you want to go ahead and actually install it. It'll take a few minutes here to go ahead and install. All right, now all we're being asked here is whether or not we want to go ahead and enable automatic updates for libdvd css2 codec. You can select no or yes, whatever one you want, but if you select no, it will be up to you to go ahead and run the update process manually. As you can see here, it tells you how to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and select yes for that. And then one last thing we need to do is actually run that same command initially, just to go ahead and initialize things here. So it's going to be sudo dpkg reconfigure. And we want the lib dvd pkg. So as you can see here, it says this package automates the process of launching downloads of the source files for our codec from a certain website, which compiles them and installs any binary packages needed. So you can select whether or not you want to go ahead and do that. Yes, we do. It's important that we do this initially, or the codec will not work. Of course, while this is going, if you do wish to download and install more packages, make sure to go ahead and just search for various codecs. If you just Google Debian codecs, there's actually a list of them available. And the process of what we're doing here is very similar. You won't need to go ahead and re-enable the contrib or the non-free repositories anymore, since that's already been done once. They're good to go. You can disable them if you want. The biggest issue with those two repositories, they might not be the most stable versions of packages, but they will be the greatest and latest. And of course, there can be vulnerabilities by getting packages from those various repositories. Following all that, the last thing I want to do is just install the VLC media player. We can do that simply by doing sudo apt install VLC. And yes, I do want to install it. Give it a few moments, and then we'll be able to launch VLC media player. This one is by far my favorite. It's available for Windows, Linux, and Mac, I believe, so some users will be familiar with it. But here we go. We have the VLC media player now. So you can play music files, DVDs, what have you on this media player here. It's got a bunch of supporting codecs already built in, so there's not much that VLC media player can't decode and play right off the bat. Well, that's about it. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial of some of the basics that are needed for Debian 10, especially for beginner users if you didn't know how to already do these. I'm glad you followed along, and if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, please post them below in the comments section. Also, make sure to subscribe for future videos and make sure to like the video. Look for any commands down in the descriptions, and thanks for watching.